Hey, how's this for my intro? Just my logo and my name underneath it. Sound good? Good. I don't even know if you can do a video on this sort of topic, but I'm gonna give it my best shot anyway. Well, hi, my name is Alpha Jackal, and this is going to be your Season 6 Power Rankings. This is going to be taken from the very start of Season 6. So we're not having a look at anybody in the future, we're not having a look at anybody who's, getting comfortable. It's just, this is how they line up at the beginning of the year. So let's get started. On screen now, you should be seeing the Power Rankings list that I have come up with. Quite colourful. I try to keep as close to the org's colours as possible. Obviously, in some cases, I had to, do a little bit of jigging just to make sure it was different from other teams. In the case of Renegades and Trifecta, both are very dark red. So I'm Renegades with darker red and Trifecta with a lighter red. Yeah, that's the power rankings that I came up with. I'm going to go a bit more in depth on why certain people are a bit higher, why certain people are a bit lower. Again, I'm trying to guess about who people are going to be talking about and who people aren't going to be talking about. So let's start off with the almost obvious point of contention, which I think people are going to have. That's going to be the support list. We have Kalas at the top. I firmly believe he is the best support in the game right now. He suits pretty much nearly every meta. He can play every single god extremely well, and having worked with him, I know his strengths and I know his weaknesses a lot better than other people. And I feel like his strengths vastly outweigh his weaknesses. Yeah, I just feel like he's the best support in the game right now. When it comes between a Milzy and a Raw, I feel like a Milzy suits more metas than a Raw, and that's the only reason why I'm putting a Milzy above a Raw. I think in terms of mechanical skill, I think in terms of potential, I think in every single aspect, a Milzy and a Raw are level. You can have either of them on your team and you go, fantastic, I have this support on my team, I am good to go. But a Milzy suits more metas than a Raw. I think most people can agree to that, and that's why I'm putting a Milzy above him. The rest of the list should be fairly obvious in terms of past performances, whether they are new to the league, new to the role, whether they're just returning from like sort of a early retirement. I don't think I have to go through the rest of the support list. Again, I think the ADC list sort of speaks for itself. You could have the conversation about the top 3 being interchanged in some way, shape, or form, but at the end of the day, this is sort of like my take on it. I think Cyclone Spin didn't have any issues at Worlds. Obviously, Vote did struggle against Arkle as well, but I think more often than not, it was Vote getting on ahead on that matchup. He just performs a bit more consistently in my eyes. I think in the end, those top 3 are a bit interchangeable. The rest of the list, you should be able to see, why they're there. Now we go into mid laners, and there's no doubt in my mind that Zeros is the best mid laner in the SPL right now. Mechanically wise, he is absolutely sound. The only issue that I can see with him is maybe his god pool could do with a bit of expanding. It certainly was a nagging point at the World Championships in the fact that they couldn't really take away the Arpwash from Moswall, or the Zeus, or the Vulcan, because those are gods that Zeros doesn't historically play. I think if he manages to expand on that sort of god pool, or if the team manages to play around it extremely well, then Zeros is going to be basically unstoppable. Next up is Paul. Don't think there's any reason for me to explain this. Basically handled everybody he came up against in the World Championship. If you had a look back at it, Wolfie had a good performance at the World Championship in the quarterfinals and in the finals. But in the semi-finals against Paul, he was, he had to play very defensively, he had to play very far back, wasn't really high on the damage numbers on the Raijin. And that was in all 3 games. It wasn't just exclusively to Paul's Ulla, it was also on Paul's Freya, where he was really putting the pressure onto Wolfie. And that's something which hadn't really been done before to him. So to see that sort of happen, I have to put Paul at the top 2. Moswall next. Great performance at Worlds, great performance during the fall split. Want to see a bit more from him in terms of consistency before I place a bit higher. And then the rest of the list, what I did was I put those players that have played in mid lane before, I am putting above those that have not, which is why you see Panda Cat down in 7. You see Big Mountains and Hurrywind above him. I think that Panda Cat is a mechanically better player than them, but as of right now, we have not seen him in the mid lane, so I cannot put him above Big Mountains or Hurrywind. And that should do it for like the mid lane side of things. Junglers, I said in terms of the ADCs, you can have the top 3 interchangeable. This is a big one. For junglers, I think you can have the top 4, 5, 6 of them interchangeable. It's just that close. I think what I said was top 4 are going to be interchangeable, and I'm gonna stick to that. Adapting, Cubo, Fred, Ice Ice Baby, and Sinosure all talked about as probably the best junglers in the world at some point. They've had their ups and downs, and basically what I went for on this list was consistency. Adapting consistent over 3 years of just being one of the best junglers in the world. Cubo Fred, next up, consistently thought of on Dignitas as one of the best junglers, and at times was the best player in the world. Next up is Sinosure. Great performance at Worlds again. Any single time he goes to a LAN environment, he really pops off, especially on signature gods of his. I expect that to continue up in the next season. And the next up, Ice Ice Baby. Has his up moments, has his down moments. We'll have to see how well he performs around with Benchy before we can place him even higher, or maybe put him maybe a bit lower. The difference between Sanford Soccer, Captain Twig, and Cherio is, again, to me, quite negligible. I could have Cherio in Sanford Soccer's position, put Captain Twig below where Cherio is, and I'd say, yeah, that's a fine list. But, again, at the end of the day, what this comes down to is the performance at Worlds. Sanford Soccer had a fantastic performance at Worlds, had a fantastic performance during the pre-qualifier LAN. Captain Twig, he had some great performances as well, but then when it came to Worlds against Splice, he really came a bit undone. And then Cherio, obviously, it shouldn't have ended that way. I think a lot of people expected... They sort of expected Mouse to get to Worlds, and they didn't. What happened was Trifecta went instead. And I don't put it down on Cherio, don't put it down on any of the players. I think just that Game 3 was a bit unfortunate. And in certain other scenarios, you will see, in that exact same draft, you will see Mouse Sports go to Worlds, and you will see Trifecta stay at home. And now we come to Anster, and I think this is what a lot of people are going to be talking about. Didn't have a phenomenal split 1 and 2, mainly because he was overshadowed by Baskin, in my opinion. He was really there to facilitate Baskin rather than carry games himself. He did carry a couple of games himself, but it was mainly Baskin on that SSG roster. And then Veneno and Baskin do this team swap. And I thought to myself, Anster is now going to be free to do whatever the fuck he wants in jungle. He's going to go back to his Season 1, Season 2 prowess and just fuck everybody over. Didn't happen. He just kept on being a bit quiet, kept on being a bit subdued during games. The only time I really felt like Anderson was back to his true Season 1, Season 2 self was at the World Championship. Seeing on his circuit, he was just manhandling Dignitas. Game 1, they should have won. Game 2, they did win. That should have been a 2-0 to Space Station. But as I said, it was just an unfortunate series of events in Game 1 that led to them losing it. It was from a winning position, and they dropped it. Then Game 3, Dignitas got rid of the circuit, and Anderson was nowhere to be found on a different god. And that doesn't speak very highly of him. I feel like he's a lot better than what that made out to be. But going by the past year, I felt like Anderson just wasn't the same player that we saw of him in Season 1 and Season 2. Maybe Season 6, with the rest of SSG being in the same team house, you'll see a lot more from him. You never know. And the decision between Weekend and Mollusk, I went on experience. Weekend has vastly more experience than Mollusk. That's why I believe he's above him. We could see, again, a lot of shakeup in the jungler side of the tier list. I think you will see top 4 going to stay together, then the mid 3 going to stay together, and then the bottom 3 are going to do some swaps. But again, that's all looking at the future. Then finally, on to the solo laners. We have a look at the top 3. Again, I believe they're interchangeable. And again, it comes down to sort of meta and who would survive in different metas. I think Deathwalker just suits every single meta. You put him on any single meta, he'll go, yeah, I know this, I'll play it. Divios is sort of in the exact same position, and this is the only time I'm going to take Season 6 potential into consideration here, because I couldn't separate them otherwise. I think in terms of the Season 6 meta, you're going to see a lot of aggressive lane bully warriors, and that's Deathwalker's bread and butter. That's what he does best. You pick him on Bologna, you put him on Osiris, you put him on Long Shen. That's exactly what Deathwalker does. That's how he got his name. So that's why I'm putting Deathwalker above Divios and then Benchy third. Easy decision for me. Variety and Aquarius, yeah, they're 4th and 5th respectively. I don't think there's any interchangeability about this. I think Variety had had a slightly subdued year. That's mainly down to the Guardian meta. I feel like he doesn't... Like, he plays well in the Guardian meta, don't get me wrong, but it's not his strength. He likes to play... In my mind, he likes to play the aggressive warrior gods. Much like pretty much any other solo laner out there. I could be completely wrong at this. I don't really speak to Variety that much. I don't really, play with him that much, so I could be completely off the mark with this, but it did not look super comfortable for Variety when he was not on the Sobek or the Baron Samedi. Outside of those two gods, he wasn't really that comfortable in terms of the meta. And then Aquarius, still rising in my eyes. I still think that he has potential to improve, still has room to grow. And Season 6, we have to see more of him for him to be able to move up the list. Nika, Fine OK, and Zalia, again, going to be completely interchangeable on this list. I really couldn't separate all three. If I could have all three using the exact same number, I would. But in terms of separating Nika and Fine OK, I put it down to my gut instinct. My gut instinct tells me that Nika is going to be slight slither, like very minuscule hair above Fine OK right now. It could change in week 1 very easily. Zalia just below that. Again, I'm not too comfortable putting Zalia down in 8th, but I'm going to look at the people who are above him. I couldn't justify putting him above anybody else. Then Scary D and Ducky. I think Scary D on Trifecta last year had some decent performances. Showed he can play in different metas quite well. Whilst Ducky, I feel like he suits the sort of janky assassin style metas extremely well. If you see Fenrir, Camazot's Naja, Thor solos being the meta next year, Ducky's stock is going to rise. But so long as you're seeing Guardians, or so long as you're seeing Bruiser Warriors, you slap fight for 10 years without getting kills, Ducky is not going to be that good of a solo laner. That's just my honest take on this, and we could see it differently. So, with all of that said and done, here are the orgs in terms of their rankings of points. The higher up the list, the lower score you got, so obviously this is like golf, you want as low a score as possible. You see Knights up there with 7 points total, when the best you can get is 5. That is absolutely insane. I don't think we've had a stronger roster in Smite than this. Next up is Splice. No surprise to see the world champions up there mingling with the Pittsburgh Knights. Afterwards, you see the slew of teams between 21 and 39 points in between 3rd and 8th. That's how competitive I feel this season's going to be of Smite. Dignitas, EU United, both on 21. Rival and SSG, both on 27. Renegades and SK, both on 30 points. It's so interchangeable that I think you could see SK finishing 3rd, you could see Dignitas finishing 8th. That's how competitive I feel it is. Whilst I think that won't happen, you could see it happening. And then, unfortunately, you do have to have 2 teams down at the bottom, and in my opinion, that's going to be Trifecta and LG. And now we come to the final column, which is going to be my actual predictions for the season. Where do I think they're going to finish at the very end? First up, Pittsburgh Knights. I don't think there's any doubt in most people's minds who the strongest roster in the SPL is and who people are expecting to win. If you have somebody else other than the Knights winning, you're probably a fan of that other roster. As a neutral, you can't really look beyond Pittsburgh Knights. Next up, we have Rival. I do have high expectations for this roster. It's got a plethora of talent on it. I don't think we've seen the best of Arkil. I don't think we've seen the best of Fine OK. I think we're going to see the best of them in this year. And I think losing the way that they did in the quarterfinals of the World Championship, PBM and Pandacat are going to have that hunger back in them to prove themselves once again. Captain Twig, he has been to pretty much every single World Championship. He hasn't won it yet. This is the roster which I think he can do it on. And they're going to have to take down the Knights, I feel, in the final. They can do it, but if they're playing that matchup 100 times, I think Knights take it more often than not. Next up is Splice. Again, I feel like, similar to Rival, they could win the whole thing. It's an extremely talented roster. It all comes down to, in my opinion, what the meta is going to be at the World Championship. If it's something that suits them, they're going to fucking dominate. If it doesn't really suit them, they're still going to try to play their own meta, and other teams are going to go, well, we're going to play the fucking meta and beat you anyway. So it really does come down to what the meta is going to be at Worlds. Next up, EU United. Again, I do have expectations for this EU United roster. Can Vedium get back to his former glory days back in Season 2 on Enemy? Can Big Man Ting start to step it up again in the SPL after having a strong performance in Season 5? We'll have to wait and see. I think when they're surrounded by veteran names, there's Benji, Ice, and Kalas, they're going to have that room to grow. Next up, we have Dignitas. Anorexia, Trixtank, Hurrywind, Cuvafred, and Variety. Extremely talented roster. The only question mark I have on this is how can Hurrywind adapt to Cuvafred and Trixtank's playstyle? If they can adapt extremely well, if they can start to play around a god who's got a bit more adaptability in terms of his god pool, Dignitas is going to do extremely well. If it takes them too much time to get that synergy going, if it takes them too long to really start kicking things off in that tri-core of the mid lane, they're going to struggle throughout the rest of the season. And now we come to Renegades. Fumble, Irafet, Dardes, Cherio, and Nika. This roster will either finish first or finish 10th. They have the potential to do both. It's just filled with some crazy names from Europe. Big question mark over Dardes in the mid lane, but overshadowed by the return of Cherio to the jungle, and it's on LAN 24/7, meaning he is going to be playing like an absolute beast. I cannot wait to see Cherio play this Season 6 in SPL. And then the Fumble Rafa dual lane, that's a very volatile dual lane. That's going to win everything or lose everything. And I could see it winning about the same as much as it loses. Next up, we have SSG. And I'm going to have to see a bit more from this roster than what I've seen in the past 2 years if I'm going to place them even higher than this. I want to see the hunger come back into the roster. I want to see the drive to improve. I want to see the drive to win come back into the roster. Especially when they have somebody like Aquarius, sort of newer to the SPL compared to the rest of the team. I want to see that win, that strive to win, come back. Next up, SK. Even though they finished semi-finals at Worlds last year, why am I putting them here? Again, I think it's just question marks over the dual lane. As you can see from the list, Neramar's a bit low. Scary D is also extremely low on the solo lane tier list. The duo of Paul and Sanford Soccer really needs to step up for this roster, and I think teams are going to start targeting that very heavily in picks and bans and very heavily in terms of game plans, especially those teams with a coach who are going to be formulating those game plans throughout the week. SK are going to struggle against the teams with a coach massively. Trifecta and LG, I don't really think I really need to talk about why they're down there. Trifecta filled with some newer names to the SPL again. Eolic just coming back from retirement. Lasbra, new to the SPL. He was playing jungle for Insignia before, but as jungle, he's now playing mid for this roster. And finally, LG down at the bottom. Big question marks over 4 out of 5 players on this roster. Joshi, how does he adapt to life in the SPL? Kiki, does he have what it takes back in the support role? Oceans, does he have what it takes back in the SPL? Mollusk, does he have what it takes to be in the SPL? Zalia, the only question mark on him is can he mold and nurture these 4 players? I think he can, but time will tell. That's going to do it for us for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Peace.